Welcome to Orb of Treasures, a channel where we explore AI, psychology, human behavior, digital systems, and the hidden forces that shape our modern civilization. So today, we are diving into a cinematic explainer on how human psychology, influence, and visionary leadership fundamentally shape modern business success. We're going to unpack the invisible mechanics of perception manipulation, behavioral engineering, and honestly, the loss of independent thinking that dictates exactly who wins and who fails in the digital age. I want you to really think about this for a second. Why is it that some messages instantly change how we behave, while others are just completely ignored? How do certain platforms engineer our beliefs, making us feel like independent thinkers while they're silently guiding our actions? What if your decisions aren't entirely your own? The stakes for business survival here are massively high, and as we'll see, true influence is rarely an accident. It all really starts right here, in the mind of the founder. There is a pretty harsh truth in business. Your enterprise simply cannot outgrow your own frame of mind. Look at titans like Warren Buffett. He spends hours every single day just expanding his mental capacity. Why? Because attention decides belief, and belief decides behavior. If you want to scale your reality, you absolutely have to deliberately engineer your own psychology first. All right, so here's how we're going to ascend the pyramid of business growth today. We'll be covering 1. The psychology of selling, 2. The architecture of branding, 3. Running versus leading, 4. The gravity of capital, and finally 5. Future-proofing. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The psychology of selling. So, how do we actually define influence? Well, influence is speaking directly to the emotional core to connect with and guide behavior, going way beyond just giving people facts. I mean, nobody goes online just hoping to be sold to, right? They log on to relax, to be entertained, to hear stories. True influence means feeding your audience an engaging human narrative way before you ever try to trigger a transaction. The whole foundation of this connection relies on a deep psychological framework. It's the classic know, like, and trust factor. Take, for example, a wildly popular online entertainer who suddenly decides to sell real estate. Are they a trained realtor? Nope. But because of their social proof and established likability, people buy from them anyway. Once that emotional trust is locked in, the actual product kind of becomes secondary. The influence dictates the behavior. Welcome to Section 2. The architecture of branding. Think about what branding actually is. You know the old saying, it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. But here is the secret sauce. What they say is strictly dictated by what you have repeatedly told them. Branding isn't magic, it's the deliberate, scientific repetition of your core message until it just becomes an accepted reality in the consumer's subconscious mind. Now, we absolutely have to draw a line in the sand here between fame and influence. Fame is just being known, but influence? That's the invisible power to actually dictate behavior and shape perception within a specific space. Think about a legendary retired athlete. Sure, they might be globally famous, but they probably lack the influence to convince you to buy some unrelated financial product. True influence actually commands action, not just eyeballs. Section 3. Running versus leading. Hey, real quick, if you're finding value in understanding how human psychology, digital systems, and modern influence actually work, make sure to subscribe to ORB of Treasures and join our growing community exploring the deeper mechanics of the modern world. All right, so consider the ultimate mental shift an entrepreneur has to make. Running the business means working from the neck down, right? Sweating, toiling, fighting daily fires. But leading the business, that means working from the neck up. You're using your mind, your strategy, and your vision to direct the future. And this leads us to a stark, honestly uncomfortable reality. Your business didn't stop growing. You did. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a founder's lack of delegation, their inability to trust their team, and their failure to evolve personally. That becomes the exact bottleneck choking the entire company's potential. If you're bogged down in the daily process, you simply cannot lead. To break out of that trap, you need some absolute non-negotiable emotional and operational boundaries. First, you've got to guard your physical and mental health to avoid the very real threat of founder's depression. You have to detach from daily operations. And as the leader, you need to master psychological dynamics, like the good cop, bad cop routine. That's where your manager handles all the day-to-day client friction, which allows you, the visionary, to swoop in as the good guy and preserve the overarching relationship. Which brings us to Section 4, the gravity of capital. One of the biggest hurdles in raising capital is actually our own psychology. It's crazy. We constantly judge other people by their actions, but we desperately expect investors to judge us by our good intentions. But look, the market can't see your pure intentions. Investors only respond to the tangible mastery you project and the professional environment you've built around yourself. Attracting that capital is basically a psychological two-step process. First up, you establish the impression. That's called priming. By using careful narrative framing and a strong presence, you create this undeniable aura of stability and competence. It's only after you've established that psychological safety that you actually present the strategic offer. You really have to embrace this ultimate corporate truth. Nobody scales a massive business with their own money. Sure, you might start a business by making money, but to grow a true enterprise, you have to raise external capital and build trust-based systems. You absolutely have to move past the fear of external validation. Finally, let's get into Section 5, future-proofing your vision. So there are 4 key pillars you need to future-proof any operation. It starts with purpose, having a philosophy that goes way beyond just making cash. Then comes people, followed by process, and finally partnership. There's this incredible anecdote from our source material about a boss who absolutely refused to fire an employee who had just lost $100,000. Instead of firing them, the boss looked at it as a really expensive, permanent training exercise. Think about it. If he fired the employee, that $100,000 lesson just walks right out the door to a competitor. True leaders invest in trust through failure. To really secure your future, you've got to aggressively hire people who are vastly smarter than you in their specific domains. And then you document their brilliance into standard operating procedures, or SOPs. You're basically downloading their expertise right into the company's DNA. Your job is not to be the smartest person in the room. Your job is to forge the strategic partnerships that keep the whole machine running. The absolute ultimate peak. That happens when your business transitions from just being a service into an ingrained daily cultural habit. Think about the reflex of checking WhatsApp or just Googling a question. When your brand actually wraps around a society's daily life and starts shaping their identity, man, you have achieved the peak of influence. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to let this philosophical reflection sink in. In the modern world, influence isn't about controlling people. It's about shaping the environment where their decisions are made. Influence is not power. It is invisible power in motion. The most dominant systems out there, they don't command your behavior. They invisibly guide it. Influence is, quite literally, invisible architecture. Thank you so much for watching. This is Orb of Treasures, where we explore AI, psychology, human behavior, digital systems, and the future of influence. If this explainer shifted your perspective today, please subscribe, like, comment, and share it around. But before you go, I want you to consider this. How do you think influence is shaping your own daily decisions online? And maybe more importantly, are you just building a job, or are you building a legacy? Keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next one. Section 2.